Lotu-Iiga.
Mr Speaker, it's my privilege to speak to this, the Regulatory Standards Bill, and may I acknowledge the Minister for bringing this bill to Parliament. The work that he's done in terms of being a person that has principles around regulations, around improving the way that Parliament works. And while the last speaker will rail against the proceeding of this bill, sir, I wasn't in the last Parliament. I didn't get an opportunity to listen to the submissions, and I certainly welcome the bill. I look forward to hearing the submissions within the Select Committee with an open mind to certainly proceeding with the bill through its process. So, sir, what does this bill do? Well, it really is, if you take it back to first principles, breaking regulations and making more effective laws and regulations is part of this government's brief. It's part of the plan that the Labor Party don't have. It's a plan to increase our exports. It's a plan around innovation and trade. And we've just heard in the last week how the Prime Minister has been to India to negotiate those types of trade agreements which will bring about prosperity for this country, sir. And it's about making more effective government services. That's part of our plan. It's also about effective taxation. And last year's tax switch was another building block to this government's regime in bringing about prosperity. And it's about infrastructure spend, sir. So breaking regulations and certainly making more effective lawmaking processes is part of our plan. So what does it do? Cutting red tape regulations certainly is about driving economic growth. It's making it easier for businesses and New Zealand companies to do better. And by doing better, they provide better and more opportunities for those out there who are after jobs. And it's also about, as the Minister pointed out in his speech, sir, it's putting in place an annual program to clean up regulations. And before the Commerce Select Committee right now, we have a regulatory bill in which we are cleaning up a number of statutes across the legislative menu, and it's about simplifying a number of laws and establishing productivity raising regulations. So, sir, Ms Dalzell says it's her idea, but we're implementing it, sir. It might be her idea, she might have thought about it, but we're certainly carrying on and doing the things that are bringing about change in this country. So it is about better regulation and less regulation. And when you think about the competing interests in terms of regulations, we know that New Zealanders are affected by regulations every day, whether it's the speed limit on our roads, the fact that we drive on the left-hand side of the road. These regulations help ensure that we live safer lives, that we get treated fairly, that we protect and manage our environment, and we have a competitive and efficient economy, and those are the things that this government stands for. But it's much, much more, and we know that. But regulation, we've got to be careful, sir, as lawmakers, we've got to be careful that regulations also have costs, and they have unintended impacts and consequences. And if poorly conceived and poorly implemented regulation, we can have significantly higher costs. It can hinder our freedoms as individuals, and it can stifle innovation and productivity. So, sir, we will introduce new regulation only when we are satisfied that it is required, that it is reasonable, and that it is robust. And we've gone about our legislative program, whether it's simplifying employment law which encourages employers to hire new staff, reduce compliance costs and give choice around holidays, whether it's introducing laws around the Resource Management Act that has become so stifling on creativity and on business development that we've had to streamline some of the clauses and the around the Resource Management Act. So, for example, we've had simplified consents for major projects allowed, including, and we have the Member of Parliament for Taupo who was here, a $1 billion private geothermal power station in Taupo, which was approved within a record 8 months. That's the sort of regulation-busting legislative agenda that we have put in place, sir. And if you look at the bill, if you actually talk about the bill, and I know the honourable member for Christchurch East did not even refer to the bill once, but if you look at the principles behind this bill, and they are principles that we actually take for granted, but that are not sometimes followed. They are principles of the rule of law. They are principles around our individual freedoms and liberties. They're about protecting private property rights, which the Honourable Rodney Hyde has been a champion of certainly in his career as a politician. It's about the role of the courts and the role that they play within the democratic process, and it is about what good lawmaking process is. So, sir, I certainly commend this bill to the Select Committee. I look forward to those submissions that will be produced, both for and against the bill, and I certainly will be treating it with the respect that this bill deserves.
Charles Chevelle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,